We are concerned not merely with the technical problem of securing and maintaining peace, but also with the important task of education and enlightenment.
Video where Bud Hopkins is showing he's like a 6-year-old kid maybe, and he shows him these sketches from like a cartoon coloring book, and he says, "Was this what you saw?" He shows him a picture of like Spider-Man. The kid's like, "No." Shows him a picture of one of the 3 dwarves. Kid's like, "No." Then he shows him the gray alien, and the expression on the kid's face is, the kid's like, "Whoa!" When I saw that, I was like, "Holy shit!" Like,
yeah, well, that's what happened with communion. That was the whole story behind communion. I remember. The one girl told me she had her 1-year-old kid, and she was in the mall, and it was a bookstore, and it was on the front, you know, the front books, the stuff. She said she looked at it, she about dropped her kid. And you see that if you look at communion, if you go to the Amazon and you look at the comments, people say, when I saw that book, I knew it had been done. And it was the cover, and I know that he told the story that when they were putting the book out, his wife started to channel in the middle of the night with this male voice. And he was going to call it body pain. Ann Strieber, his wife. Strieber, right. So he was going to call it body pain. And then his wife starts channeling in the middle of the night, "No, we will not call it body pain. We will call it communion, because that's what it is." Wow. And then I heard the rumor that he had been told to put the alien picture on the cover, as if the alien picture was put on there like a theory, a trigger thing, to make all these people triggered that they had been abducted. And that's, if you read the comments, that's what it looks like. It looks like he got and now he says it may have been 1 million letters from the book Communion. It's hundreds of thousands at Rice University, all these letters, and stored in a file.
Oh yeah, the letters from people who read the book.
They read the book. They said, "Oh, this happened to me," and they put out the book.
They got bags and bags of letters, all from
hundreds of thousands. He said maybe as many as 1 million now, letters that came in from one book. And so you have this sort of triggering event where you start to wonder, you know, how much of this is triggering, because that's
how many people were affected just by one image.
Yeah.
And then reading the book, and it really makes you think.
And yet when you get when I compare the alien thing, I don't know if Desta saw, I did a video of or a PowerPoint of grays. So I take Betty Hill's gray, and I take Lee Strieber's gray, and I'm putting them on top of each other. You can sort of see them.
Overlays.
And overlays, and bang, 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 and one after another. None of them look even close.
That's right, I know.
Absolutely, totally different. And everybody says, "This is great," but I've never seen 2 that really look the same. People see the photo and say, "Yeah, I saw one of those." You know, but then when they draw it, it's got a ridge in the head.
Yeah, that's right.
And its eyes have got pupils, and the other ones are their stuff. So.
Have you heard any recent stories, good stories about grays? I haven't heard that many. Not even in the last 10 years. There's not that many good gray alien stories. Not like there used to be anyway.
Well, a lot of them are still popping up from behind, you know, from the past. Like with, if you've read we did Nancy Tremaine's book, and she had the grays on board the ship. But then you have these other weird things as to what's really going on, because on hers, she did the book, and then she was talking about the reptilian. And so then I said to her, I said, "Reptilian? You saw the guy on the ship, didn't you?" Yeah. She said the Greys were there, and Mister, she calls him Mister, was there. And then the Greys were doing this test where they stick the needle in her stomach or whatever, and she's a 12-year-old girl. And then she puts her hands on her hips and says, "Mister, why did you let them do that to me?" And then he says this thing, "Your pain is perceived. Put the best construction on everything," something to that effect. And then I said, "So what do he look like?" She says, "Oh, he was a human being. He was a human guy. He had dark hair. He was sitting at a panel." And I said, "Yeah, but you said he was a reptilian." Well, when I was regressed, I saw him as a child. He was a reptilian, and now he's like Chris Bledsoe's. He's like an energy being. So she had he trains to 3 different things as he was going through his life. So that's this whole thing about the projection of what are you actually seeing, almost like pre-1961 when you look at all the reports. you see these aliens with space helmets on, you know.
That's right.
Stuff like that.
It changes so
And
drastically.
and you see that where it's a reflection of what we're into, or the idea where, but in the book, John Mack's book, Passport to the Cosmos, he talks about this, and he just projects it, that if you see grays, there's fear. And if you're very religious, you're going to see energy type beings. And if you're highly into sex or highly driven or, you know, very emotional, you're going to see reptilians. And this whole idea that you may be seeing whatever being you're projecting, and that may be why during your life the being will change.
What if you see mantises? Then what?
Well, that's always medical, isn't it? Doesn't it? Mantis is always connected to medical.
They're always
stuff.
associated with kind of like the overlords, the more the masters, medical stuff.
Yeah.
So you were talking about injuries earlier.
Yeah, so I got something. I'm going to give you a little gift
Yeah.
here, but first I got to give you a little warning here.
I'm getting scared.
What
is that?
This is you better not touch it. You could get injured from this.
It's not.
Because you know what they say. They say, you know,
hitchhikers
if you
and
get too
stuff,
close to a craft within 500 feet, that you could get injured, and they give you a brain tumor. They show this one thing with a brain tumor, or the lesion in the brain, or whatever, or that you're gonna go crazy or whatever. So this here, Desta's got a couple of pieces, and I've got a couple of pieces. This is from perhaps the most famous Canadian case of all times. This is Falcon Lake.
Oh, Falcon Lake, right on.
So-
I drove by the sign when I was coming in
So
Winnipeg.
you have to get on a horse and go in there, because there's
Yeah.
only been 100 people on the site. Desta and I were there with the crew out of
We gotta go.
Ontario.
I gotta go.
So we go there, and Desta's filming. Desta's got the film. The guy's describing the thing, and I'm standing there looking, and I see that the rock that this thing landed on, it's all sort of shattering. I guess it's like the pieces are sort of breaking off the top. So I figure, holy cow! So I start filling my pockets with pieces of rock. So the craft may actually have been sitting on this thing.
Wow,
the foot
that's
may
cool.
actually been sitting on.
What was the guy's name again?
Steve Mikulak.
Mikulak,
Yeah.
right.
And he got burned.
He got burned.
So he did get injured.
And there was photos of that, and hospital records, and all sorts of receipts to prove that too.
Yeah. And so this is the rock that this thing was sitting on. And well, no, I gave it to you. This is your,
It's
your
mine.
gift for coming.
Right on. Right on. Yeah.
There you go. So, but he was injured. That was one of the things Chris Bledsoe told me. Now I asked him again about getting close to the craft, because he has this arthritis thing. And
Oh, the rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah,
That's right,
and so Ryan says that the intelligence people told me got it by, they took him through the roof. They took him right through the roof, and that Kit Green's research with 100 people said that everybody that had this all had this rheumatoid arthritis thing, and it was from coming in contact with a being. But then when I talked to Chris originally, he said he got it. He was warned not to touch the craft when it's powered up. And so this is what happened to Mikulak. So Mikulak sees this thing land, and it's red. He can see it. He's got he's doing, you know, he's got these black visor things on, and he sees this red thing, and it's powered up, and he touches the side of the craft, and he's yelling, "Hey, Yankee boys, come on out, we'll help you." And he puts his hand on the craft, and it's hot, and the glove starts to burn, and then the thing shifts on its side, and it starts to turn, and that vent comes around the side from the craft, and it burns his shirt.
It's a big plume of hot steam or something comes
and then he
out.
has this nausea and vomiting, and
Radiation
and this burn goes away and comes back, so it's not an ordinary burn. And so this is one of the things is if you do touch the craft when it's powered up, you will be injured. Because we did Steve Boucher's book. So Steve Boucher tells the story how they tell him, you know, when you're going there, keep your head straight ahead. And of course Steve goes, no, I'm going to, no. And he goes, he turns his head, and they're all going in a row. And as soon as he turns his head, everything stops. And then he puts his head again, and he keeps going. And they say, don't touch the craft. And he said, oh, okay, I'll touch the craft. And he touches the craft as he's going in, and he gets this growth on his finger that takes, I don't know how long it was, months or years to go away or whatever, and from this thing of the finger. So there is that thing that if you touch the craft when it's powered up. But then people want to do this whole thing where if you're getting close. So then when I posted, you know, I was within 500 yards 5 times, and I wasn't injured. And so the people started attacking me, you know, like, oh, you know, you're Canadian, you know, who's going to pay for all our healthcare costs if we get injured or whatever. And there are these people that get injured, but what you see is Kit Green's running a test. And if you read Peniston's book, Jim Peniston's book, he comes to Peniston to get Peniston's DNA and his blood Peniston won't give it to him. And
Jim Peniston's from Rendlesham Forest.
Yeah.
And what happened to Peniston again? He close.
he touched it. He's the guy that touched the
Touched the
craft.
craft,
Yeah.
right.
So and Burroughs claimed to be injured, or he said he was injured. He had this thing, and what they said it was terahertz energy. That he was too close to the craft, and that it affected his heart valve, and he had his heart valve replaced. But the question is, well, Peniston was closer than he was when this thing flared up as they came in close. It flared up and then went down, and he was within, he said 20 feet of this thing when it flared up. There was a berm in front of him, but it flared up and then he touched the craft, and he wasn't injured. Now whether the craft was powered when he touched it or whatever, but the question is, well, why would, if it's a field effect, if it's a terahertz field effect, why would Burroughs not be injured? Because Burroughs was farther ahead. Peniston said he didn't know where it was. He was nowhere near him, and he was really close. And so the Kit Green study, what the Kit Green had told him, and these figures keep changing now because so they haven't released this thing. Kit Green's got these people that he researched that all they claim they had these injuries.
With OSAP or ATIP?
Well, that's what I keep saying is when you read Peniston's book,
Gary
Peniston
Nolan
says,
too,
"Hey,
right?
what the hell's going on here? What are you doing?"
Right.
And then he says, "Well, we're doing this study on propulsion." He said, "What do you mean propulsion? Are you think I'm crazy? Like, come on." And he said, "Oh, we're trying to figure out how does it pop in and pop out." And he said, "You working for the government? Are you working for the military?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "Like the Defense Department?" "Yeah." And so who's all working? He said, "Well, there's 8 people. So it's Kit Green and I guess Nolan, and then Hal Puthoff and a bunch of other guys, and they're looking at experiences on this effect of the injuries." But the thing is that when they do it with the military, you can't be researching people like you and me because there's this, whatever they call it, Title 10. You can't go and get medical records from public citizens.
So there was a big number of people that they were like 600
Well, see, he
or
said,
something?
first when he was with Peniston said that he told him there was 50. Then there was a study came out saying 100, and then there was 120 or whatever like that. But to me, there'd all be military witnesses. That's the only files you can get. So that's the difference is, our military witnesses, what the hell's a military witness doing within 500 yards? Probably standing there with a gun and, wanting to shoot it, or, with a plane. Because I even posted last night, I posted this whole thing and I got it confirmed, was that the Soviets, George Knapp went to the Soviet Union in 91 and 93 and was talking to these guys, and they had a flop in 1990 in Moscow, and the head of the air staff had given them warnings: do not engage, do not try to shoot them down, because I guess they lost so many planes. And so the thing is, what's the effect? Because Kit Green hasn't released who they are. Now when Kit Green was talking to Burroughs said, "Well, how many of these guys are still alive?" And he said, "Just you and Peniston." And he said, "Really?" So that was 48 out of 50. Now the figure that they're using now is 25% of the guys were injured. Well, I mean, that's a big shift, but you can't really do anything because you don't have the data. You don't know who they actually researched, what the injuries were. And to me, the most important thing is who these guys were, because if they're military witnesses, it's the whole thing with Rendlesham Forest, because that's what George Knapp said. The problem we had was these guys.
Yeah, there might be other
with
cases too.
Packing guns that came in. Those are the guys that were affected. So if you go in with a bad attitude and you got a gun, it's like the joke. I mean, don't take your gun to a CE5. I mean, because it's a reflective. So if you've got a bad attitude and you're coming in there, and that's the same thing as with.
We got to get T-shirts made of that. Don't take a gun to a CE5.
Yeah. Or the thing with where your attitude is different. Like where you got Steve Boucher says, they say don't touch the craft. Okay. And touch the craft. It's like it's that attitude where you're at odds with whatever it is. Whereas you get the people who have the good experiences, like Betty Andreas, and she's got these experiences where it's all love and light, and the blue herbs are great and stuff like that. So the whole thing, there is a thing with injuries. And if, for example, people always bring up the Colares thing. So they asked Bigelow.
Oh yeah, that's right.
They asked Bigelow at one time. They said, "Oh, people got injured. What are you talking about? You talk about people?" And he said, "Colares."
Right.
So of course I said, "Okay, I'll go look at this Colares thing. I'll find out."
That was Jacques Vallée that did a bunch of research.
He did research there, and what Jacques Vallée says at one point, and he doesn't get very specific, but he says, "Well, you got to take a look at the culture you're dealing with. These people go to Roman Catholic Mass in the morning, and they go to Umbanda ceremonies in the evening."
Oh yeah, that's right.
So you got to look at the people. It's not so much this effect that there's an outside effect doing you. You're part of the phenomenon. And he brought that up. So when I looked at the Colares thing, I'm looking, and some people said there's 10,000 people and 9,000 left the town, and they were all petrified or whatever. And so I looked at it, and then they said there was 2 deaths, and there's 4 deaths. But if there was 1,000 people some people claim there's 1,000 people got injured. But the thing was that when I looked at it, 4 out of 1,000 is not much. And the one girl that came in the morning to the doctor, and then she was all petrified. But you know the whole thing with the voodoo stuff. The people are given the evil eye and the people are dead with it.
Right. Same thing in that Umbanda religion in Quimbanda in Brazil.
So the thing is that effect, because she had a heart attack. So did she have it because of the injury? And the other thing they mentioned about the injury, you start seeing these really interesting things that everybody's just saying, oh, these people got killed there, and they leave all the rest of the story out. The one thing was, they said that the guy that ran the program, they brought in the Brazilian Air Force to investigate this, and the guy said the strange thing was they were all injured on the left side of the body. But if you take a look, if you look at Roger Lear's book on the alien scalpel, he did all the 17 alien implants. He took them out. He said he had 250 cases that were all on the left side of the body.
Wow, really?
And the left side of the body is run by the right brain. It's vice versa, the right side of the brain. And so whatever it is, they're not interested in your left brain, your rational, analytical brain, male. They're interested in the right brain. All the implants are on the left side of the body. And people say, oh no, I know one that's on the right side of the body or whatever. But you have that side, I noticed that. And then the other thing I noticed was that when they brought the military in, so this thing was going on, people have different things, but it was 3 months in 1977. So they bring the military in. As soon as they brought the military in, it stopped. None of the people were injured anymore, but the military people the thing was following them around. It was like it was posing for them. And they took 500 photographs, and the guy was describing how, he said at one point there was like 100,000 people on a beach or something. There was some celebration going on or whatever. And he said the UFO didn't go to these people on the beach. We were farther down, and the UFO came to us, and they were like posing, and they were taking these photographs of the thing, and they actually had the guy that was running the program actually had contact. The being actually was there, and the being actually hugged him from behind, and he was really petrified. And the being whispered in talked in his ear, and said to him, "Don't freak out" or something like that. We're not gonna harm you. And so none of the military people were injured, except the only thing they were injured with was they claimed that their eyesight had gone because they were looking at this object.
Right.
And that you see in the one with Texas with these 2 women, they had eye damage as well.
Oh yes.
So if you're looking up, and I remember in '75 we had a case here in Manitoba. There was these two women who were principals, and one was of a Hutterite colony. And I mean, it's like we're not going public here. And the National Enquirer guy got them to talk. And then the one woman told the story. She said, "We're going along, and this thing was over top of the car." And the one woman was driving, and the other one was looking up, and they're both principals. And she's looking up at this thing, and then the thing was following them, and they were freaking out or whatever. And then they pulled into this driveway. They're going cross country. They pulled into this driveway of a farm, and then the thing goes over 8 miles to this microwave tower. And it's sitting over at Brunkill Mantle, but it's sitting on top of this microwave tower. And then they sort of relax. They go, oh, okay. So they go back out, and they've only got a couple of miles. They're going to a town called Sanford. They've got a couple of miles to go, and they go, and it's like, boom, it's back on top of the car again. And this woman's looking out, and she said that she had.
So was that like red burning in the eyes? What the John Keel called conjunctivitis?
Yeah, he
in the Mothman prophecies.
Oh, okay, we'll have to look at that because that's
pretty interesting.
It's the same thing. You look at the sun, so it's not like you have an evil object. If you look at the object, it does appear that if you look at these high energy objects, it will affect your eyes. Because the military people said they had to wear glasses, and some people got cataracts. So that's it. So there is this thing, but they want to tie it in that there's this we're the victims and this thing is attacking us and stuff like that.
What was that case there where the 2 women with the kids saw it on the highway?
That's the cash.
Right.
Yeah.
And she had radiation injuries and got really sick.
Yeah.
They had the eyesight thing too.
Yeah, they had a little bit of eyesight problem. Yeah.
Interesting.
And so that's the thing is you do have these injuries, but when you start looking at the cases, they really look really interesting. Like the fact that in Colares, as soon as the military came, the thing stopped. And when the military investigation was over after 3 months, because this guy had this encounter where the being grabs him and says, "Don't be afraid" or whatever, and then he reports it to his superior. And at that time, he said that the U.S. It was at the time in Brazil, it was a military dictatorship, and the American military and intelligence were involved, and they were helping sort of run the country. And to keep the socialist commie guys out and whatever, and that as soon as they reported this case of contact, that they actually had made contact with a being, the whole program was shut down, and nobody has reported a UFO at Colares since. I mean, it's like, it's totally gone away. So when I look at cases, I look at these things like, okay, so why did it go away? Why did it stop when the military looked at it? And everybody just wants to pick up, oh, there's 2 people died. Man, this is evil aliens.
Yeah. And then the main guy, the general, was found dead in his hotel, either committed suicide or some...
Well, the main guy, after they interviewed him in '97, he committed suicide. Yeah,
committed
it was the main guy. That was the guy that was hugged. That was the guy.
Yeah. And then his daughter said that he would have never committed suicide like that. Why didn't he just use a gun? Why would he strangle himself with like weird rubber tubing in a hotel room? Yeah. Pretty strange. The Colares story is really fascinating.
And that's the thing. When more you look at it, the more you get the idea, because people want to simplify it by evil aliens or evil demons or whatever. And when you start looking at the case, it gets really, really weird, and it actually gets really interesting. So even this morning, I was mentioning the fact that this morning now they're on back about this thing about the evil aliens, and I sort of made this joke,
Who was saying that?
Well, there's people on Twitter. They're all on UFO Twitter. They're all on this thing about the thing following people home. And so I bring up the fact, well, if you start looking at the cases, I mean, they want to isolate just Skinwalker Ranch, this hitchhiker thing, and it's like, no. I mean, I bring up this guy with the going into the cemetery and banging on the mausoleum, and he said he had every type of thing following him: brown, white, black, whatever.
Say that story though.
Yeah, that was Ron Johnson told the story that he had done EVP for 20 years.
What's his background, Ron Johnson? Who's this guy?
He was a trucker. He lives near Skinwalker Ranch. In fact, he had some photographs that he was showing that we actually showed. And this is from a ranch near Skinwalker Ranch to show that it's not just Skinwalker Ranch, it's this whole valley thing that's going on. And the stuff on there was this one guy, it was like these security cameras picking up stuff. So they have the one, and you see this outhouse, and this guy standing there with his hat, standing in front of this outhouse. Not an outhouse, but it was like a building farther, sort of in the farmyard, and he's standing there. And then the other one is this guy walking across in front of the security camera, and he's like this. He's walking, but it's like 3 or 4 things, like it's a multi-dimensional thing.
Right, different
like you can see these multi-dimensional things as this guy's walking. And we showed these photographs, and then the guy with the ranch contacted Ron, and he said, "Hey, these aren't public. I don't want these shown." And
so
you can imagine.
These were pictures that he took, or he did his own
investigation. He was sending to Ron. He was saying, so Ron lives near Skinwalker Ranch, and he spends a lot of time, because he's an experiencer since the 1960s, and he has this LB being that it took him to the spirit world where he met his mother, and that's where you get these crossovers. It's like you think it's evil aliens. Well, why are you taking to the spirit world? And then in the spirit world, you see these really weird things happen in the spirit world where he's telling the story. He says 3 times LB, the being that, and now he believes the being may actually be his son, his hybrid son. So he takes him to the spirit world 3 times, one to the lower level, like Eben Alexander talks about. One was he was with his mother, but he couldn't see his mother. The third, he was with his mother. They're walking around in a field. It's like, he said, it's like, and they come up to this building, and this is this projection thing. So he said it looked like a temple in Nephi, Utah. So he's a Mormon guy. So his impression is this temple thing, and his mother takes him to this temple building, and she said, "Ron, when you die," because he's only got 14% of his heart. His heart is just about shut down. "When you come, you're going to get a room in this building," and then he goes into the building, and he said, it was like 10 times, at least 10 times the size inside the building as it was outside. And I said, hey, that's exactly what Chris Bledsoe said.
Yeah, a lot of UFO.
That's exactly what Terry Lovelace said. Terry Lovelace said it was 30 feet across on the outside, or 60 feet across the inside.
Travis Walton, too, said the same thing, I think.
Yeah, the size of a football stadium inside. And even Hal Puthoff talked about that. He said, I'd like to know how that works. And that's the whole thing. When you see these things, that tells you there's an anomaly. And the anomaly, if you figure out the anomaly, will give you a new thing of physics, that how the world actually works.
Glitch in the matrix.
So Ron would do this EVP stuff, and he had these things following home all the time. He actually talked about one. It was in his car, in his truck, and sitting in the seat beside him as he's driving away from one of these EVP things. So he'd go to these graveyards, and he does the one where he goes and he bangs on this mausoleum, and he said, "Hey, come on up for a photograph!"
With the intention to film and record.
Yeah, he had the camera all set up. He's always photographing.
I don't know if I have
He said
that.
this black thing sort of came out, and he took one photograph, and then he disassembled the thing, went home, and he said 5 years, 3 different houses before that thing finally left him. And we may interview him to try to find out what it was doing. Because that's what happened with Chris Bledsoe. The same thing. Chris, when we had the dog experience with Nellie, the black lab. So when we came back in the house after it happened, and the blood shooting up all over the place, whatever, then it was the different interpretations. How do you interpret an event? So if you're looking at evil, you're going to interpret it that way. And if you're looking at positive, you're going to interpret it a different way. So he said, well, it was the shadow people. I said, shadow people? Why did the shadow people cut the dog? That doesn't make any sense. And he said, yeah, they're evil. And I said, well, how do you know they're evil? And he said, well, because they're dark. I said, I guess they're dark doesn't mean they're evil. So I didn't agree with that. And then I said, what the shadow people do? And he said, they're there all the time. And they just go like two-dimensional. They go along the wall and come to the next wall and just go right through the wall. And then I asked him, did you see the guy with the hat? And he said, yeah, I saw that guy. And then he said, all the kids, I talked to all the kids, they all said, yeah, they'd had encounters with the shadow people. And when I said, you know, the fact that I didn't see them as being negative, that everybody sees these shadow people, then he said, well, it pushed Yvonne in the kitchen one time. And I said, okay, so it pushed Yvonne in the kitchen, okay, fine. And so what I said is, so I had a different interpretation. I said, the reason they cut the dog is because they're doing the movie. What's his name? Mel Gibson wanted to do the movie.
Right, at the time, yeah.
And they were going to have Julia Roberts in the movie and stuff. And they were doing all this weird stuff. So to me, it's always a theory, wow, that the beings say, hey, we got a movie going here. Like, let's do some stuff here.
But what I thought was weird about the dog bleeding thing was it happened right as you showed up, right after you showed up at Chris Bledsoe's house for the first time.
No, second time.
Second time.
That's part of the story. So I went to his place because I was in Washington. I'm going to lecture for Paula Harris in Florida. So I get a rent-a-car and I'm going right by his place. He's right on the highway. So I said, hey, and I'd only met him one time at what's called The Gathering, which is an event that was this rich guy, Larry guy hosts, and he's got all these researchers. And basically what he wanted to do is he wanted to bring his family in and this big dinner with hundreds of people, and brings his family in to show I'm not crazy. And here's all these experts and asking these questions, and we were all there or whatever. And we didn't do anything. We just walked around the whole weekend. We didn't do anything. And, you know, everybody's there. John Alexander was there. All these people were there. And so I met Chris there. And then, so I said, well, I'm going to Florida. I'll go right to his place. I said, Chris, can I stop and see you? And I really didn't know too much about his story. And he's very nice. He took me, as Death Day, he took me to the river, and he showed me where it happened, and where Chris saw the thing in the bush, and up the hill. He goes up this hill, whatever, and where the UFOs appeared. And so I got a pretty good view, and the UFO was sitting on top of the road. I saw all this sort of stuff. And when he comes back to the house, he has the beings at the house, the two different beings, explains all that to me, and we're talking, and I'm there for like a day and a half or whatever. So I said, well, okay, I gotta head off. I gotta go to Florida. I want to try to get to Florida. So he said, okay, fine. So I think the kids had all left. The wife had left. We were by ourselves, and he's got 3 dogs. He's got Nellie's the big black lab, and then he's got this medium-sized Heinz 57 dog, and then he's got this little Chihuahua. So he puts them outside. I didn't really realize they were outside. And then all of a sudden we're sitting there, and we're playing on Facebook, and I'm about to leave. And we're just sitting in the living room, and all of a sudden I hear Chris say, hey, what are you doing back in the room? And I look, and these 3 dogs are all standing there looking at us, And he said, I put you outside. How'd you get back in? So we go to the front door, and the front door is wide open, like wide open. And he goes, oh, get outside, get outside. He pushes these dogs out. He closes the door. So I say, okay, Chris, I got to go. And I get in the car, and I drive off, and I get to Florida. And I get to Florida, and I got an email. He says, hey, happened twice more after you left. He says, the dogs are outside. He said, I was there, and the dogs are back inside. I went, and the front door was wide open. So I put them back outside again, closed the door, went to the bathroom, came out of the bathroom, the dogs are back in the house again. And I go, you left the door open.
Right.
Fine, you just left the door open. And that was the whole thing, was like, they were doing this, because it was part of the movie. They want this in the movie, we're going to make real excitement. And so then I'm going, that's bullshit, I don't believe this. So I get back, so it happened right when I came back. And I had the camera in the front seat of the car. I don't know why I had the camera taking pictures, I don't know why, but it was on the front seat of the car. So when I came, then I took pictures. I guess I took it out because I wanted to take pictures of the tree, but it was sitting on the front seat of the car, so I took some pictures of the tree, whatever. Put it back in the car, and then, so we're about to go in. This is like 10 minutes into this thing, not even 10 minutes. He says, okay, you want to go back inside? I said, yeah, okay. So we go, and that's when it happens. So Chris is here, I'm here, and Nellie comes on my left side. Dogs want to get in the house before you. So the dog's making a race to go in the house because he knows we're going in. And all of a sudden I hear Chris say, hey, Nellie, what happened to you? And I look, and the blood shooting up the dog's neck, and I'm going, boy, this is weird. Cause
so you walked into the house, right? And where did this whole place?
Well, as we were going in the house, as we were walking up the
stairs.
stairs, because I got photographs of the blood going up the stairs into
and you're going to release
there's
those soon, right? You're going to show me those pictures?
Yeah, I've got you.
I have to talk to Destin about that, I think, maybe.
So we go there, and then as we're going in the door, this is when it happens. This is when he said, "What's going on?" And the blood's shooting up on the walls. And we're going down this little hallway in the wall, and his blood's shooting up, and he's going, the first thing I think is, this is weird, because it's like not the dogs letting out. Just like that's all bullshit. This is weird. Run to the car, get the camera, come back, and start photographing. You know, and Chris has got this rag. He says, "Get me a rag, get me a rag, get me a knife. I got to cut off the collar." And the Nellie's just lying there, just calmly like this, just lying there, you know, like nothing's wrong. And he takes the rag and he puts the rag, and I've got a photograph of this. The rag, it's all full of blood, it's just white rag, it's totally full of blood. And he's got the rag on the dog's neck. And then we're talking, and then Chris Jr. comes out with a semi-automatic rifle and says, "Where's that effing raccoon?" And I go, "There's no raccoon." He says, "I'm gonna shoot." He's like just angry.
Assume that the raccoon attacked the dog or something.
And the girlfriend is cleaning up the blood off the walls, and he's got this gun. I said, "I guarantee we're right here, man. There was no raccoon." He said, "Well, then the dog, some dog." I said, "No, Nellie was right behind us. There's no way anything bit her because we were right there. We would have heard, you know."
And wasn't there blood on your pant leg too?
Well, it get really weird. So then. Chris Jr. and I walk around, he's got this rifle, and we're walking around, and we could see where the blood had actually started, right on the edge of there's a concrete patio right at the back door, and it was right on the edge of the concrete patio, because they had barbed wire fence, but it was way over on the other side, and I thought maybe she got cut by something, but we couldn't find any way. So then Chris puts up his hand with this thing, he cuts off the collar, and we're talking. I said, "Well, we should take it to the vet, but it'd probably die. It's losing blood so fast, it's going to die before it gets to the vet." And then Chris lifts the rag up, and then Nellie gets up, wags her tail, and goes taking off around the house. I go, "I got the camera." So I go running after her around the house. She comes to the front door, where they've been leaving this door open to the other dog. She barks at the door one time, and then just goes racing off into the next yard. It's like she's chasing something. And so then I go back, and that's when I notice that I have these light blue jeans on, that the left side of my pants, there's all this blood up the side of my blue jeans. There was no blood on anything else, and it was sort of like, you didn't think the dogs were impressive? Watch this. It's like, so I'm in the middle of this thing.
What could cause a dog to bleed that much and then just heal up so quickly?
Yeah, and they checked that night, and that night or the next night, the father and Chris checked, and they couldn't find a wound in the dog's neck.
Couldn't find
any wound. And so that's where we had this discussion about, is it the evil shadow people? And I said, no, Chris. I said, I know what they did. I mean, this is the theory. Wow, they know you're doing a movie. They want this in the movie. And he goes, "Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so." And I said, "Yeah, Chris, that's what it is." And then 2 weeks later, he phones me up and he says, or he emails me. He says, "You still got those photographs?" I said, "Yeah, I got them." He says, "Warner Brothers would like to see them." So I said, when I heard that Julia Roberts was going to play in the movie, I said, "Hey, so who's playing me?" So this is, you'll see this if they ever do the Chris Bledsoe movie.
George Clooney,
it's going to be in there. That's pretty funny. So that's this whole thing about the evil thing, where it depends how you look at it. You look at the case very closely. To me, it always looks like this sort of theory. Wow, that they may have cut the dog, but they did it for this, benefit of. And the other thing was the thing with the idea of dogs, that dogs is the same thing. So if you have like the Skinwalker Ranch, where you've got attack dogs, or Chris Bledsoe's dogs were hunting dogs. In the back, where this all happened, in the back, so there's his house, there's the bush where this thing went into the bush, and the dog went chasing it, and the dog ended up dying shortly after. And then you have a giant kennel with 15 dogs. All these hunting dogs that they were raising. And then the porch, so the hunting dogs were all pointed back into the forest. That's why he sent them into the forest, because the dogs were all looking into the back of the kennel, barking in that direction as if it was in behind the kennel in the bush. And that's when he sent the hunting dog in and said, "Go get him." And the hunting dog went in, so you got this very angry dog who's, going and ends up getting injured. So it's this whole thing about attitude. It's, as Bashar says, what you put out comes back. It's a reflective thing. And that's what they show at Skinwalker Ranch, where Bigelow said we really didn't have any injuries. And then you get Brandon say, the guy that owns it now, Brandon Fugel, And he says they pray when they go in, and the only one they had was the skeptical guy that was injured. They was real skeptical about it, and then he got injured.
Dragon, I guess, the guy that got the head injury, the swollen scalp, where he had some sort of. I remember seeing that on the show.
Yeah, I don't know the details, but the only ones that they had the problem is that's when was the OSAP thing. When the military went in, or the DIA went in there, and that's when they were posting this morning saying, every single one of these guys all took something home. And it's like, yeah, sure they did. I mean, they're coming in there with bad attitude, and it follows everybody. Same as Bob McGuire, if you know Bob McGuire. So Bob McGuire went to Chris Bledsoe's house, and it followed him home too. And he and his wife both got healed at home. They had these healing experiences. So it'd follow you home, but it depends what your attitude is as to whether you're going to have a good experience or bad experience. So
you didn't have anything follow you home from Chris Bledsoe's or any of these? You never had anything like that? Any weird experiences?
Not that I can think of. I've had sort of weird type experiences, but I'd have to think about that. I'm not. Did you have anything follow you home from Chris's place? Did you have an experience at Chris's place?
We saw some things,
Okay.
but no, not anything big.
Yeah. See, Chris has never reported anything sort of negative. He has had all these things with the people being healed. This woman with 4-stage cancer, and then we were in in Maine where this woman, these two women, they come to him for healing, and the one is deaf. They're twins in their 70s or whatever. And then he says, I didn't know what to do, so I went, Jesus, in the name of Jesus, I heal you. And then I lecture, the woman comes on my lecture and goes, I can hear everything. So I'm going, oh. It's like being in a twilight zone. And that's the thing is that I'm trying to get across. And I guess it'll eventually, because now we're at least debating it on Twitter. Where every time they post one of the negative ones, I post a positive thing.
Right.
Or something to show that stuff like skinwalkers happens, not skinwalkers, but shadow people, happens all the time. It's part of paranormal phenomena. And that's the whole deal is what are we actually looking at Skinwalker Ranch? Is it paranormal phenomena or is it UFO phenomena? And I'd say it's all part of whatever this paranormal thing is.
The phenomena.
The phenomena. I call it the intelligence.
The intelligence.
Because it definitely is intelligent. It definitely does things. Or you get the thing where we get Tyler D, this big high-level guy that supposedly, has this, it sits in his building at NASA where he's, this thing is in the next room that helps them think.
Is that the jump room? Where they go into that room? No?
No, this is this thing, they've got a room there where they say don't say it's a sealed room, and it helps the people think.
Right, they get ideas when they go in there.
Well, they're sitting in the next room beside it, not in the room. They're sitting, and so when you hear this guy...
It's an American Cosmic, right?
Yeah,
so Pasulka talks about it being in the next room.
And then when you hear stuff like him, that's what I try to do, is I try to sit back and I listen to people like him, Pandolfi, Kit Green, what are these people saying, these high-level people, and just listen carefully to what they're saying, because they'll say stuff, and it means stuff, because they know something you do. They may not tell you directly. So when I hear that Diane Pasulka says, we went to the gifting field, we were blindfolded by him, we went there, and suddenly he gets down and starts praying. And I go, what? And then he builds an altar to go on the site, and there's all these altars that these people are building on a government property that's locked, that's a recovery site. And then you go like, these people know something. And I heard Whitley Strieber told me the story, and I think I know who he was referring to, but he got a message. And he went to one of the key guys and said, I got a message from the aliens, you got to be more spiritual about this. And the guy converted to Catholicism. So I asked Ryan, I said, hey, this guy convert to Catholicism? And he said, I heard the rumor.
Ask Ryan.
Ryan Bledsoe.
Oh, Ryan Bledsoe.
I said, did this guy convert to Catholicism? And he goes,
and he was a high-level guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah,
you can probably figure it out. I mean, if you think you know what I'm talking about. But there was a story that Hal Puthoff had converted to Catholicism too. And so you start wondering, like, what's going on? But that was the thing, was when I heard Whitley tell the story that he had been given a message to take to one of these guys.
And then the interesting aspect too is you get all these people from the Vatican and the Roman Catholics coming to see Chris Bledsoe too.
Yeah. And that's the key, is I think that's what we've got to do, is that's why the experience is so important, rather than the sightings or what the heck the government believes or they're putting out in some press conference or whatever. You got to listen to the people who are watching Chris, or even this last thing where I mentioned the fact that there's this new panel, and he said, yeah, he's been contacted. And so that's the thing, is you go to people who seem to have a contact, and try to figure out why they're contacting these people, what's different, or look at their genes. That's what they're doing with the experiences with Kit Green, looking at why these people, and the other thing they used was, if you read Kit Green's paper, they talk about the antenna, this part of the brain, they call it the antenna. So I said to Chris, hey Chris, did they ever use the word antenna when they tested you?
They did study Chris.
They did him, and they did Whitley Strieber, I think, but that was only civilians I know, and the rest were like John Burroughs and all the military people. But I said to Chris, hey, did they use the word antenna when you were there? And he goes, yeah, they used it. and it's the idea, they're antennas. These people are antennas. Why are these people picking up the signal? They're picking up some sort of signal, and that's when I asked Chris, when they had this story that they'd come to him and said, they don't like us. I just love that. They don't like us. They seem to like you, and we'd like to know what's going on. Can you ask them what's going on? Because they won't talk to us. And I said to Chris, did they actually tell you that? He said, yeah. So a couple of groups came to me and said that they were coming to him, because he said, well, what are you looking at me for? I go, why me? And they said, because they won't talk to us. Sort of coming to find out what's going on. And that's the thing we got to do. We got to look at the people who have that. And even we're talking about today, this thing where your mother is into it, and then you're into it, and then you start seeing these patterns. That it's the standard pattern.
And the same thing with Chris Bledsoe. Now you see it kind of pass on to Ryan Bledsoe.
Yeah.
And how prominent he's become, right?
Yeah, and he does talk about that, because in the first regression,
giving us the signal. We got to switch. We got to switch gears on now.
Well, let me just do one more thing. So Chris Bledsoe, this is the whole idea of this soul contract, which is this spiritual thing that people don't want to go into. Is this whole idea when they do Chris Bledsoe in the 2008 regression, they say to him, when did you first meet them? He said, they've been with me since before I was born. They were with me when I was shot. So he was shot with a shotgun at 10 years old. And he said, he said, as soon as he was shot, as his face hit the ground, he could feel the leaves coming up as he hit the ground. He said suddenly he was standing in outer space. He said, there's nothing around me, but I'm standing on a platform. I'm standing on something I can't see it. I'm standing in outer space. I'm looking around as this 9-year-old kid. And that's in the transcript. It says, they were there, they saved him, they were with him then, and then he said, they've been with me since before I was born, which is this whole soul contract idea, that he's come in on a contract, and then O'Connell, the guy who was doing the interview, who's an associate of John Mack at Harvard, says to him, so were they with you in a past life? And he said, yeah. And that's the whole deal, is if the alien is with you in a past life, then everything changes. And that's why I always ask them the weird question, like people when they get somebody on board a ship, they always want to ask them all these questions like, did they probe you, did it hurt, were you scared? And I always say, hey, do you have any clothes on? And then people always go, no, I never thought about it. No, I didn't have any clothes on. I never thought about that before. And I go, didn't think that was weird? And do you have any sex organs? No, I don't think any sex. I never had anybody say that sex organs. And if it's a physical being, biological being, why has he got that sex organ? And then the key one was, I said to Betty Andreasen's husband, his first experience in 1944, Betty Andreasen in 1946, they had these beings that were being taken to the one, or she was being taken. He wasn't spiritually involved. I think he wasn't allowed to go. But she gets to go see the one and all this sort of stuff. And I said, did the being ever get any older? So you're a 6-year-old kid. Now you're like 80 years old, an old guy. Did the being ever get any older? And he said, no. But aliens live a long time. It's like this justification thing.
Right.
And you start wondering, if it's in a past life, 25% of all experiencers say the being told them that they were in the past life. They were connected in the past life. And so the thing gets more complex, but I think the message comes from the experiencers who are the actual contact with the intelligence, and they're the ones that are going to tell you. If you go to the government, they're going to say, no, nothing's going on, bullshit.
Reminds me of what Whitley Strieber talks about in Transformation and Communion with the architects of reality, I think is the term, and the Earth is a school for souls.
Yeah.
And past lives and the connection to souls.
Yeah, and that goes, and they start seeing this crossover that goes across all sort of paranormal phenomena, that it's the same message, it's the same story all the time. It's just like a different script, a different play where we're gonna do aliens like that. It's the thing with when I talk to the beings in England, are you ETs? Well, if you want us to be ETs, we can be ETs. We can take you to our planet if you want, but no, we're actually from here. We've always been here, and you're the visitor. And it's this whole idea that they can come in and play this role, and comes down to the basic spiritual thing you'll see in Desta's channeling and all the spiritual writings, is this whole idea, remember who you actually are. You're not the actor on the stage. You're playing an actor on the stage. You are off. You are the person behind watching the play. You came here to play a play, and when you leave, it's like Whitley Strieber. When you leave, Whitley Strieber's wife leaves, and she comes back to Whitley, and she says, Whitley, I just want to let you know, I'm no longer Anne, but I'll always be Anne to you. So I was on the stage with you, and I played Anne, but I'm no longer Anne. I'm off to a different play now. And that's the whole deal, is we've got to always remember who we are. We keep forgetting. We keep falling into the illusion of the fact that we are this actor, and you know it's all random, and we just live this one life or whatever.
And that reminds me of the next conversation we're going to get into.
Yeah.
Your new book, Breakthrough.